is Chargers, it is Chiefs in Brazil with the entire world watching. I couldn't think of a better way to kick off this 2025 NFL season.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Locked On Podcast Network. I am David Drogemeyer, co-host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, and I am joined by the Locked On Chiefs podcast, Chris Clark and Ryan Tracy, and we're going to talk about this amazing football game to start the 2025 season. It's going to be very exciting. We're going to get into the biggest storylines for each team, talk about the biggest matchups, the matchups that are going to decide how this game ends, and of course, we're going to give you our keys to victory, how each one of these teams have to set up to be able to win this football game. But before we get into it, Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Gentlemen, the season is finally upon us. Hallelujah. We made it through the dead, cold off season, and now it's time for football to begin again. How are you guys doing? What's going on over there in Chiefs land?
I'm excited for football. I can't say it any other way. Like it's finally here. Like preseason was a nice little bit of whetting the appetite, but regular season football can't get any better than that. And Chiefs Chargers is not normally the way that the season starts, but that's a lot of fun too.
It surely is, Ryan, and I mean we got a lot to talk about here with these matchups. Obviously, the Chiefs coming out of yet another Super Bowl appearance. It did not obviously end the way that Chiefs fans would have liked it to, obviously, but you get back to the top of the mountain piece almost. But this is another campaign here. Starting with the biggest storylines for the Chiefs, what would you say is the most important one to touch on as we get into this football game?
Right now that with Rasheed Rice out, that you have Hollywood Brown back, that you are able to put at least two of your three amigos out there, your top three wide receiver set, and get them after, because it's been a combination of the receiving options, the targets, as well as the protection that has slowed down this offense. And they are looking big time to prove that they can go back over the top, that they can get downfield yet again. And without Rice, it's going to be a challenge, obviously, but with Hollywood back on, and he didn't play in the preseason, they maybe could have dressed him for the last preseason game, but they chose not to, just to save him for this matchup. And obviously it just goes to show, when you have a division rival and you have a tough team coming at you and you got to make this trip, I think that's the best way forward and gives him a shot.
Absolutely. And with the Chargers, guys, there's a lot of changes. I think after the last preseason or game that they played in the regular season, obviously the playoff game against the Houston Texans, it was very apparent that they had to load up on weapons. In that playoff game, you look at the stat line, it is Ladd McConkey, and then there's everybody else. He had 197 yards receiving, and nobody else had more than 25 yards. And so going into this offseason, the plan was very, very clear. We have to get more weapons for Justin Herbert. It just can't have another season with the lack of weaponry to be able to arm him to do what he's capable of doing. So that's why they go out and they grab a Tyler Conklin. They go out and they get Keenan Allen back. They draft Trey Harris. They get Omarion Hampton in the first round. They go get Keandre Lambert-Smith, the wide receiver they really like in the fifth round, who could really run and really go up and get the football, and Arondé Gadsden the second, a just primary pass-catching tight end, a guy who can really stretch the field, that can really threaten the seam, and they had to improve this offense. That was the major point here. I guess the real question is how long is it going to take for all of these new elements to be able to mesh and to be able to go out there and play at the level that the Chargers needed? They didn't invest as much on the offensive line as I would have liked. They went full court press on improving the weapons, and that's going to have to show itself in game one against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, and it is a great question. How long is it going to take them to get to a point where they can mesh as an offense? How long is it going to take them to get on the same page, to get some of the kinks worked out? You watched Mahomes struggle at times with Xavier Worthy last year, just not being on the same page, not having that chemistry. And I think that that's going to be a big thing playing into this game is their chemistry that, they gained over the entire season and then working in training camp in the preseason. But also, I think one of the other biggest stories for Kansas City is what kept them from having even a chance to win the Super Bowl against the Eagles. Don't get me wrong. The defense had their own problems, and that was an issue. But it was protection of Patrick Mahomes. And what did Kansas City do this offseason? They rebuilt their offensive line to an extent. They re-signed Trey Smith after they franchise tag him, which we didn't think that they would be doing because of the extra salary cap. And then you go out and you trade Joe Thuney, who has been a stalwart and one of the best guards in football.
Big surprise there.
Huge surprise for a lot of people, but it made sense for what they were trying to do. And then they go and sign a left tackle in Jalen Moore, who's not even going to end up probably playing in this game. At least you hope he doesn't, because that would mean there's an injury of some sort. And you get Josh Simmons in the first round. Like, everybody thought he was going to be missing time this season, and he hasn't missed a snap, I don't believe, even in OTAs. Like, even going back to OTAs, I don't think he missed a snap at the left tackle position. They have rebuilt, or I guess maybe retooled their offensive line, I guess is maybe the better word. And I feel a lot better about it this year than I did last year. Obviously, you have a question at left guard, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the big question I have is, what I'm looking at is they are better across the board when you look at their top 6 offensive linemen, not just the top 5, because Jalen Moore can play probably 4 positions on this line, and that's a huge help when you get injuries throughout the season.
Yeah, no question about it. The offensive line is a physically demanding position. There's going to be attrition. We see it every single year. It's the teams that have the best quality depth that can weather that storm while they wait for their starters to get back on the field are the teams that we routinely see at the end in the playoffs, the teams that are trying to vie for a Super Bowl championship. And that's obviously what we're all trying to do. As far as the offensive line for the Chargers, I wish they would have done more. I mean, it's one of the things that we talked about so much in the offseason, me and Daniel. Are they going to add more? It's the same center. It's the same left guard that's out there. Yes, they went out there and they grabbed the big ticket, Makai Becton, the 6'7", 363-pound people mover and just a straight up mauler. He is definitely going to be an improvement at the right guard position, but is that enough, right? And we'll talk about some of those key matchups a little bit later on, as I'm sure we will, because the test is going to be straight out the gate. As we know, the defensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs sports one of the most dominant interior presences in the National Football League. So will Makai Becton be able to stay healthy? Will he be able to open up holes for a running game that, quite frankly, was not good enough last year? That's why they go get a Najee Harris. That's why they go get an Omarion Hampton, to be able to improve a rushing attack that just frankly has to be better in 2025 for the Chargers if they want to compete. That's the storyline I'm going to be looking at, is can they be able to weather the storm on the offensive line? And did they make enough improvements on that interior to be able to handle the challenges that they're going to see? And the biggest one probably coming up on Friday.
That's going to be interesting to find out as well, because Chris Jones is not exactly renowned for just taking on triple teams and stopping the run all by his lonesome. So, let's get in some passing downs and we'll see what happens. But Becton is certainly going to be somebody that they have to know where he's at all times. And it's going to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, it most certainly is. I think for the Chiefs, is there any other kind of storylines that you want to talk about before we move on to the biggest matchups?
The big thing is that there's one anchor in the secondary. His name's Trent McDuffie, and everything else is work in motion at this point. So it's a two-edged sword, knowing that what the Chargers need to do is utilize those new options in Omarion and Najee and come downhill. Should they get into third, they got to throw the ball. It's still not going to be exactly what it's been in the past, where you feel like the Chiefs have the advantage on third down. I don't know that that's true this time. It's going to be a brawl the whole way.
It most certainly is, and that's especially what the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman want to do. They want to make it a knockdown, drag-out, physical fight. That's the type of football that they want to play. We'll see if they have the personnel to be able to get into it. And speaking of that, we got to talk about some of those biggest matchups between the Chargers and Chiefs in this game, and we're going to do that right after this. But first, I got to talk to you guys about DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered. Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks. Saving money every time you order, these players delivered when it matters most. Let's break it down. The guys who delivered in the biggest ways the last couple of weeks were Nico Reed and Marlo Wax, who came up big, not just in one game, but strung together multiple big games to earn themselves roster spots. From interceptions to forced fumbles, they did it all, and they turned in big performances in those Saturday preseason games and gave themselves a chance to play on Sundays. You can win every Saturday this season with DoorDash. And just like Nico Reed and Marlo Wax delivered for the Chargers, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You can save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo code period 1118. And we are back here on Crossover Thursday. Thank you so much for checking us out, joining myself, David Drogemeyer of the Locked On Chargers podcast, and the two gentlemen from the Locked On Chiefs podcast, Chris Clark and Ryan Tracy. And now we got to talk about some of the biggest matchups that are going to be deciding this football game. And I think when we talk about matchups, we talked about it a little bit before with Stone Cold Chris Jones and Makai Becton. I think that's one of the biggest matchups in this football game for me. We have seen Jones ruin the Chargers games many times by creating chaos on the interior. And the only real improvement, like I talked about earlier, was Makai Becton, who really only allowed one pressure in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs and was truly phenomenal. However, like I said before, it's Bradley Bozeman and Zion Johnson back at guard and center respectively, and they struggled a lot last year handling stunts and twists, and you know Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator of the Chiefs, is going to make things difficult for the Chargers, going to have to make them think on their feet, have to react after the snap. It's going to be a very, very big test, but that's going to be one of those matchups where if you can just hold Chris Jones at bay, Ryan, you could have yourself a better chance of winning in this football game. As far as the biggest matchups that you see on that side of things, what is the biggest matchup you want to talk about here to start things off?
You know, it goes back and forth for me, and I think the biggest question leads to the biggest matchup. And yes, moving Chris Jones around to get on Becton, to get on Johnson, there's going to be a lot, and that's certainly one of them. But the opposite is true as well. And for me, it's not necessarily a player on a player. For me, it's Jesse Minter against Josh Simmons, because Josh is prepared. He's an excellent athlete. He is ready, honestly, a year before I thought he would be. But it's about overloading him. It's about getting in between him and Kingsley Suamataia, who is new to the left guard position, was playing that left tackle last year. That division, can you drive a wedge there? Can you confuse them enough with what your front looks like in order to get that slight advantage? And the good thing is Simmons has great recovery time. Maybe the best feet they've had at left tackle since Eric Fisher or before. He was clearly tackle one in this class on all of my boards. No matter what I was looking at, he's going to have to rely on all those skills. It's not just going to be Mac. It's going to be everything thrown at him. And I think that is the chess game that will show up on the field that maybe has a lot more going on underneath the surface.
For sure. Because with the Chargers defense, it's not just about Khalil Mack, who by all accounts looks like an absolute animal. In the offseason, he has been revitalized. He is absolutely solely focused on making sure that the Chargers not only get to the playoffs, but win a playoff game. He has not won a playoff game in his illustrious first ballot Hall of Fame career. And so obviously he's only one man, but like I said, it's not just Khalil Mack. You also have to worry about one of the best blitzing safeties in the National Football League in Derwin James, who now they know, Jesse Minter knows that he makes his most impact close to the line of scrimmage. He was a second team all-pro slot corner last year who was an absolute maniac rushing after the quarterback. Derwin James is like he's shot out of a cannon. But speaking of Derwin James and matchups, we obviously can't talk about any matchups if we're not talking about Derwin James and Deion Henley versus the other first ballot Hall of Famer on the other side of things, the man who just got engaged to one of the biggest pop stars on the face of the earth, Travis Kelce. It's always appointment television, gentlemen. Chris Clark, this is a matchup that absolutely is going to help decide this football game. How has Travis Kelce looked in the offseason? Is he look good? And it seems like there's been some whispers out there that this might be him or his last season riding into the sunset.
I would say it's possible it's going to be his last season. We don't know. He's tried to deny and say that he doesn't want to talk about it.
Naturally.
And he said, they'll figure out the contract after this year. So, trying to make it sound like he could be playing for another season. I think he's looked better this offseason in this training camp and preseason than he looked probably most of last year. And part of that, I think he was a little dinged up at times last year, but I also don't think he was in the kind of shape that I think he's in right now. So I do think that he is going to be in a better position this year than he was last year. And I do think it's going to be a key in this game. I don't know. I'm not going to say that I don't think that Travis Kelce is going to be a key in this game, but I do think one of the biggest keys, and when you start talking matchups, is going to be the Chiefs wide receivers against the Chargers safeties. Because if you start taking a guy like Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy and Tyquan Thornton, and you're able to pull out the safeties in the corners going down the field, that's going to open up everything underneath. So it's a question of how do you defend that? How do you go up against a Chiefs offense that looks like, from what we saw in the preseason and from everything we saw in training camp, wants to throw the ball down the field and wants to attack, and they have the speed to do it.
That's going to be an interesting matchup for sure, because with Jesse Minter, I think we didn't, obviously in the preseason, you don't see much. They don't really game plan. They don't really do much. However, he did do a simulated pressure with a big man dropping into coverage, and he did grab an interception because of that. So Jesse Minter can get very, very creative with his blitz packages. And obviously with Patrick Mahomes, he's one of the absolute best at performing off script and out of the structure of the play. So it's something you're really going to have to pay attention to. And I think, as far as another big matchup here on my side, and really just for this football game in general, Ryan, is Trent McDuffie, the fantastic corner of the Kansas City Chiefs, going up against the second-year demon Lambeau Lad McConkey. That is going to be an absolutely phenomenal matchup. And obviously not just because these are two of the best young players in the NFL, but it's the byproduct of what it does to the rest of the guys that now will have more favorable, advantageous one-on-one opportunities that they're going to have to win, because now there is no, I don't know what Lad McConkey is going to bring to the table. The scouting report is out. You know how good this guy is. You have to pay attention to him. You have to game plan for him. So it really makes it obviously that much more important for the guys like Quentin Johnston, the guys like Tyler Conklin, the other gentlemen that are a part of this Chargers offense, to be able to get open and take advantage of the opportunities that they get, because Trent McDuffie is going to be paying quite a lot of attention to Lad McConkey in this football game.
Yeah, if I'm in the room with Steve, I'm telling Spags to just put him on him all day. Cart him around. Is Lad going to get a whip route on him? Probably. That's all right. He runs that, maybe my favorite route that he runs. That's going to work in your advantage, because I think elsewhere you're setting yourself up. Got to remember, too, Christian Fulton's now one of the starting corners on this roster, on this side of the ball. That changes everything. Now, obviously, Jay Harris is new. Robert Smith is new. Okay, that's fine. There's not a whole lot of familiarity there. But I'll take Fulton against a rookie any day of the week. And then, is Keenan Allen really going to exploit him? Is he really going to exploit Watson? I think that's maybe the matchup that turns into the biggest question mark that I'm waiting to see.
One thing that we can't discount is that relationship and that chemistry that Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen so clearly and obviously have. And Keenan Allen got signed about a month ago and was already voted to be a kind of secondary captain of this football team. That just goes to show you kind of how this team views him and how important he's going to be, because outside of Keenan Allen, guys, it's a very, very young Chargers wide receiver group, that a lot of guys that only have 2 or 3 years in this league. So it's very, very important for him to be able to show up and provide that chemistry, because it's going to be needed. Keenan Allen's going to have to be there on third down to be able to move the chains and keep this thing moving. But that is going to wrap things up for this segment here. We have to get into the keys to victory for each one of these football teams. What do these teams have to do to be able to win this game? We are going to get into that right after this. But first, I got to tell you guys about Mazda. This is Mazda's Moving the Game Forward, brought to you by those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. Because these moments do more than win, they push what's possible. They remind us to go the extra yard, shift into that gear, and keep moving the game forward. It will be incredibly important for the Chargers to keep moving forward, and that starts on Friday against the Chiefs. Last year, it was the Chiefs getting a clutch assist from the field goal post, but this is the year Justin Herbert will have to be the one to come up with the clutch plays and help the Chargers move forward in 2025. The new season brings hope for all teams, and both of these teams will have a chance to put themselves atop of the AFC West. That's what keeps fans and players alike moving forward, always chasing the next great moment. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. I also have to tell you guys about FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. The odds are out for the Chargers primetime game against the Chiefs on Friday night, and Kansas City is currently a 3-point favorite in Brazil, but FanDuel gives you so much more than that, including anytime touchdown scorers and weekly specials. If you think it's going to be a shootout, you can choose Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes to combine for 6+ touchdowns and get that plus 700 of those odds. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, guys, we're back here on Crossover Thursday. David Drogemeyer here of the Locked On Chargers podcast, joined by Chris Clark and Ryan Tracy of the Locked On Chiefs podcast, and we have been the hosts of the Locked On Chargers and Chiefs podcast, respectively, for what is this, 7 or 8 years now, guys? There's been a lot of continuity here with the AFC West podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So we have been covering these teams for a very, very long time. And now we're at the part of the program where we got to talk about what each one of these teams need to do to be able to put themselves in position to start their season 1-0. As you know, technically, the Chargers are the home team. I'll kick things off to the visitors to start this thing off. All right, Chris Clark, we're going to talk about the most important matchups in this game. As far as Chargers Chiefs in this football game, what is the most important matchup for the Chiefs in order to win this football game?
I still think it comes down to Josh Simmons and whoever he goes against. Kansas City struggled mightily at the left tackle position. They've had 5 different left tackles in their in the last 5 seasons, in all their 5 Super Bowls. I apologize. They've had 5 different left tackles. You cannot continuously do that. I understand injuries happen, and that's part of it, but getting continuity there, getting a left tackle that you can build around, and getting Mahomes in a situation where he is comfortable and he doesn't feel like he has to always be checking on that side of the ball to verify whether or not he's going to be getting hit is extremely important, and it starts this week 1. If they can establish a good foundation at left tackle, it is a huge deal for not only this game, but the entire season.
Yeah, no question about it. You got to make sure and protect Patrick Mahomes. Like I mentioned earlier, though, I think one of my keys to kind of combat that directly is you got to keep Patrick Mahomes in the pocket. You cannot allow him to operate off script and to be able to play that backyard football that he does so incredibly well, extending the plays, just being fast enough to get past you and get to the first down lines just over and over and over again. So you have to keep him in the pocket. You have to shut down those running lanes. You got to keep him kind of in structure while getting pressure in his face. Got to have that pocket collapse around him so he can't escape and extend the play that we've seen so many frustrating times when the Chargers and Chiefs play. It absolutely has to happen. As far as the second thing, Ryan Tracy, that the Chiefs have to do, what would you say that is?
It's really straightforward. Don't let them beat you up. You have to stop the run. It's very simple. Jim wants to do it. Don't let him fool you. Anybody who's watching, who's a Chiefs fan, there is no joking about it. He wants to run down your throat. He will, until he's forced not to. You have to go take the initiative. You have to do everything you can to stop that run, and it's going to be tough. Derek Nottie just rejoined this team like 4 minutes before they took off for Brazil. So like he knows the system. He should jump right back in. But he's got a back. He's had a tricep. There's all kinds of injury history there with an older player that's coming in and is now going to have to man that front in the gap next to Chris Jones. They're going to run at you. You got to keep the linebackers clean. You got to make sure that they can come downhill. Now, the linebackers are a good group, and they have gelled together to become one of the I would say top half. I won't call them top 5, but top 16 in the league. Sure. But you get on them and you get physical with them, that's where things start to break down. So you got to be clean. You got to get to the ball and you got to attack, particularly Hampton. I'm a little upset. I got to tell you, Hampton was my RB1 in this draft. Hate seeing him in blue, but there's ways to combat that. You throw a little red on it, it all works out. So you got to attack that run.
No question. And it's a big part of the key for success for the Chargers. I mean, and last year, the Chiefs did an excellent job of mitigating the rushing attack for the Chargers. The Chargers ran it 38 times in the 2 matchups against the Chiefs for only 121 yards. That's only 3.1 yards per carry. Every single team that you play against will take that every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. So that's why it was so important for the Chargers to go get a Najee Harris, to go get an Amarion Hampton, who these guys, they break tackles. They force 3, 4, 5 guys to drag you to the ground, and they're falling forward. The Chargers, they have to do that. They got to beat the Chiefs up in this game. They have to dominate the line of scrimmage. They have to play ball control offense. Keep that Patrick Mahomes offense off of the football field as long as humanly possible. And for the Chargers, when they are on the field, outside of running the football, which you definitely have to do, they have to hit the play action game. Last year, Justin Herbert was downright lethal in play action, 95.1 PFF grade when utilizing play action, 8 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, and a completion percentage over 74% for Justin Herbert when he is hitting the play action. They were fantastic at it last year with one of the worst running games in the NFL. If that running game is even league average this year, it's going to make it so much more potent and deadly for the Chargers play action game. And also last year, Justin Herbert could not run. He was very banged up. Going into the season, he had the plantar fascia injury, and then during the season had 2 separate ankle injuries that he had to play through where they just couldn't run the football. They had to really condense the playbook to be able to protect him. Now he's fully healthy, and I firmly expect that he will run more with the football, and that's only going to help that play action game be that much more deadly.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be something that Kansas City needs to take into account when they're playing defense. They need to figure out who's going to be marking Justin Herbert. While he's not, and I want to be clear, he's not obviously a Lamar Jackson type or even really Josh Allen. Like, that's not the case. But he is somebody that can beat you with his legs if you give him the opportunity to do it and you have pass coverage downfield. So I do think that that's something that's going to be a big key in this game is slowing down the running game, and it doesn't just necessarily mean the running backs. That could also mean Justin Herbert. But when I look at this game, this is a statement type game for Kansas City, and it's not that I think they need to go out and they need to win this game to have a chance to do anything this year. Obviously, game 1, who knows what the season's going to bring. But the reality is you go back and you look at how their offense played last year. They struggled because they didn't have the wide receivers. They struggled because they didn't have the protection. I said that the protection was important, and it is, but you have wide receivers now that you have to take advantage of. And Patrick Mahomes, while he's been fantastic at so many things throughout his career, struggled with the deep ball last year. If they can come out and establish the deep ball game 1, and even if they only hit half of them and they take 5 or 6 shots and they only hit half, that still is going to be something that's going to be a huge advantage for this Chiefs offense, because it's going to make everybody else feel like they have to back up, and then it's going to open up the intermediates and the passing in the running game.
One thing we know about these two teams, guys, is that they know each other extremely well. These games are always very close, and they usually come down to who has the football last. So we will see who has the football last in this game of the Chargers and the Chiefs in Brazil with the entire world watching. But that's going to wrap things up for this crossover Thursday episode. I've been your host, David Drogemeyer, with Chris Clark and Ryan Tracy of the Locked On Chiefs podcast. Please check out our podcasts, as we will, of course, give you our keys for success and some predictions as we tell you who we think is going to win this football game. Thank you so much for joining us on this crossover Thursday, and take it easy and enjoy the game.